All right, hello everyone. This is the CircuitPython weekly meeting for January 13th, 2025. This is the time of the week where we get together to talk about all things CircuitPython. My name is Tim, and I am sponsored by Adafruit to work on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python that's designed to run on tiny computers called microcontrollers, and the primary sponsor of the CircuitPython development is Adafruit. So if you want to help support CircuitPython, one of the easiest ways to do that is by purchasing hardware from them at adafruit.com. This meeting gets hosted on the Adafruit Discord server, which you can join anytime by going to adafru.it/discord. We hold the meeting in the CircuitPython dev text channel as well as the CircuitPython voice channel. This meeting typically occurs on Mondays at 2 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time, 11 a.m. U.S. Pacific Time, except when that coincides with a U.S. holiday. In the notes doc, there's a link to a calendar which you can view online or add to your favorite calendar app. We also send out notifications about the upcoming meetings via Discord. So if you'd like to receive those notifications whenever we do change the day or time, that is another thing that you get from the CircuitPythonistas role on Discord. We'll send out pings in the event that we move the meeting, as we will be doing, in fact, for next week. We'll mention this again during the wrap-up, but just a preliminary note, next week's meeting is going to be on Tuesday for the U.S. holiday, Martin Luther King Jr. Day on Monday. Excuse me. There is a shared notes document that accompanies the meeting and recording. You can contribute to that document beforehand. The final notes doc includes timestamps to go along with the video, so you can use the doc to skip around and view the parts of the video that interest you most. The meeting tends to run 30 to 60 minutes, and after each meeting, we post a link for the next week's meeting's notes document over in the CircuitPython dev channel on Discord. You can always check the pinned messages there throughout the week to find the upcoming meetings notes document. If you'd like to add your hug reports or status updates throughout the week, you can totally do that as well. You don't have to wait until Monday. Those typically go up following the end of the previous meeting in the following hours or so. Let's see. As far as the meeting structure, meeting is going to be held in 5 parts. The first part will be community news. That's a look at CircuitPython on hardware newsletter. We've got a couple of items selected from that we'll talk about this week. Next up is the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. That one is a quantitative overview of the entire project. A chance to look at the project by the numbers, separate from our status updates. Then we will get into hug reports, which is the first of our 2 round-robin sections where you can take a moment to recognize the folks in our community and beyond. We'll go around the room, so to speak, and everyone can read off their own hug reports. And again, if you would like to add hug reports but you can't attend the meeting or would prefer not to read them off, then the host will read them for you during that section. Next up is status updates. That's our second round robin where you can take a moment and tell folks what you've been working on since the last meeting and what you'll be up to in the next week until the next meeting. After that, we've got In the Weeds, which is an opportunity for some more long-form discussions. Those can either come out of status updates or be identified as a topic that is too long or complex for status updates. And if you do have a topic that you'd like to discuss in the weeds, just go ahead and put a note down at the bottom of the document with your name, and then write out a bit about what you would like to discuss. And when the time comes, the host will call on you, or if you are unable to speak or not attending or something, then we'll read through what notes you do put down there in the weeds. But just a reminder, if you've got those and you can get them listed in the notes doc as early as possible, that is best, rather than trying to wait until the actual section is about to begin. And so with that, I will get in place in the doc here. I will take the first set of timestamps, and we will start with some community news for the week. Oops, wrong button. There we go. There is that. And first item, yes, okay. So these news items and many more are available in the weekly Python for Microcontrollers newsletter, which goes out via email on Monday mornings. You can visit adafruitdaily.com to subscribe to that. Thanks to Anne for putting together the newsletter. If you've got Python on hardware projects to share, or you find content which you'd like to see included, please consider contributing to the newsletter. You can open a PR on GitHub in the CircuitPython weekly newsletter repo. You can tag @an engineer or hashtag CircuitPython on Mastodon X or you can email to cpnews@adafruit.com with a link. And I think Blue Sky may work as well. There's a CircuitPython Blue Sky account. I think if you tag that, is probably another way that you can send stuff in. So some items this week. Let me update the timestamp here since I actually went on to tell you some different stuff. So news items that caught my eye this week from the newsletter. Scott and Lady Ada talk CircuitPython in 2025. So Scott Shawcroft, the lead developer of CircuitPython, spoke with Lady Ada about the past, present, and future of CircuitPython. There is a link here to the Adafruit blog and the YouTube video link for that discussion. Next up, we've got Raspberry Pi has released the Raspberry Pi 5 with a whopping 16 gigabytes of RAM. On Thursday, Raspberry Pi released the awaited 16 gigabyte RAM version of the Pi 5 flagship single board computer. Boards are available from retails at a price point of $120 US. The optimized D0 stepping of the Broadcom BCM2712 application processor includes support for memories larger than 8 gigabytes, and our friends at Micron were able to help us offer a single package containing 8 of their 16 gigabit LPD DRX4 dies, making a total of 16 gigabytes product feasible for the first time. They also launched the Raspberry Pi Carbon removal credits, providing an option to mitigate the carbon footprint of manufacturing, shipping, and disposing of one of their computers. Priced at $4, they use offsets based on Undo Carbon's enhanced rock weathering ERW technology. There's a link here to Raspberry Pi News if you would like to read more about that new beefy Raspberry Pi 5. Next up, OSHWA nears 3,000 open source projects, and Adafruit has reached 800. The Open Source Hardware Association, OSHWA for short, is nearing the certification of 3,000 open source projects worldwide as of the end of 2024. And of those, 800 projects, are Adafruit devices. There is a link here to a blog post about that over on OSHWA's website. Next up, we have the year in open source hardware. This one's more of a review of 2024. Why open hardware is needed. Open hardware isn't just about abstract principles. Several projects this year offered powerful demonstrations of why open hardware is needed. This was a nice read that I took in this morning over my coffee. A nice look back at 2024, some of the open source projects that OSHWA certified last year, as well as looking forward to some interesting stuff for next year. So take a look over that if open source hardware is of interest to you, which I imagine it is. For many of the folks hearing this. Next up, and I think our last one for today from the newsletter, the project that caught my eye this week was the Cyber Walkman. This is a cyberpunk-style multi-display music player using Python, which was a really cool-looking little handheld device, kind of cyberpunk or steampunk style handheld that can play some music for you. So check that out. There's links here to Hackster, Hackaday.io, Twitter, and a couple other places if you want to learn more about this project. Pretty cool looking thing. All right. So let me timestamp that. I will give you a couple more details about the newsletter. I think I mentioned some, but just in case I missed anything, all these items and many more did come from the Python on Microcontrollers weekly newsletter, which is a CircuitPython community-run newsletter that gets emailed out on Mondays. The complete archives are available at adafruitdaily.com, and it highlights the latest on Python on hardware-related news from around the web, including CircuitPython, Python, and MicroPython developments. Yes, and we definitely did talk about submitting your own news items, so just keep in mind as folks go throughout the week, if you see anything cool that involves Python, CircuitPython, or MicroPython that you think would be a good fit for the newsletter, please feel free to contribute that. Either open a pull request on GitHub, email cpnews@adafruit.com, or tag a post on Mastodon, Blue Sky, or X, formerly known as Twitter, using that hashtag CircuitPython hashtag, and then we will see it and get it included. So thanks to everyone who does submit news items for that. Next up, we have got the state of CircuitPython, the libraries, and Blinka. This is a quantitative overview of the entire projects. It gives us a chance to look at the health of the project separate from our status updates. We'll talk about the project overall, and then we'll separately discuss the core, the libraries, and Blinka. So first up, I will read you the stats from the overall section this week. Let me get a timestamp here. So overall, across all the repositories this week, we had 25 pull requests merged by 13 different authors, which is great to see. A couple of the names that stuck out to my eye as either newer or less frequent or just less familiar to me. So these folks might be newer or less frequent contributors, or they might be people who have been around, but for whatever reason, I don't recognize their username. And those names this week in the overall section are Ctho, 9305, Bootsy, Arturo 182, NC Guck, and Supkick. So thanks to those folks again who might be newer. Thanks to all of our other authors as well, whose names are more familiar to my eye. We had 5 reviewers this week, so thanks to Dan, Jeff, Scott, Lady Ada, and myself for doing some reviews this week. And we, in terms of issues, we had 16 issues closed by 8 different people with 9 new issues opened up by 8 people, so we are net down a bit overall on issues. And with that, I will turn it over to Scott to tell us about the core for this week.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. Okay, so for the core, we had 15 pull requests merged from 9 different authors. Thank you to all the authors. I won't highlight any other folks because you just did. We had 3 reviewers, Dan, myself, and Jeff. We currently have 19 open pull requests, which is well under our goal of 25, which is a single page. So thank you to everybody for getting through all of the pull requests and closing them if they were not relevant anymore. We had 5 closed issues by 3 people and 4 open by 3. So we're net down 1, which is great, for a total of 780 open issues. We track prioritization for issues using the milestone system on GitHub. And we'd like to note that this is prioritization for Adafruit funded folks. Our low priority bucket is called long term, but if there are folks that want to work on things that have been marked long term, you're more than welcome to. It just means that we're not going to get to it very soon. So we have kind of 2 or 3 key milestones that are active. We have 15 open issues on 10.0, which is the next large stable release. 92X has 10 open. Did I say 10 or 15? 10.0 has 15 open issues. 92X has 10 open issues. So these are bugs that we want to get to pretty quick because they're prevalent on the current stable release. And then there's also 51 open issues for 9XX, which is the probably sooner than long term, but no immediate plans bucket. That's why there's 50 in there. And we have 0 issues not assigned to milestones. So we're keeping up on triage. And that's where we are for the core.
All right. Thank you, Scott. Next up is the section covering the libraries. This section covers all of the CircuitPython libraries. The Adafruit libraries can all be found on GitHub under names like Adafruit _CircuitPython _ and then the name of whatever library it is. These tend to be either driver libraries that help you interface with a particular piece of hardware or helper libraries that let you kind of work on your project at a bit of a higher level in your user code without worrying about as many of the complexities. Let's see here. Across those libraries this week, let's start with the totals. We do have 348 Adafruit libraries right now and 149 community libraries. So the total is 497 across both bundles currently. And then in the past week, we had 10 pull requests merged for the Adafruit libraries. Those came from 4 different authors, thanks to those folks, including some of those names mentioned earlier. We had 3 reviewers for libraries, so thanks again to our reviewers. And of the merged pull requests, most of them were on the newer side this week. They were all less than 6 or less days old, with a handful down at 1 day as usual. And then that leaves us at the end of the week with 56 open pull requests. The oldest one is a draft at 879 days. The newest one is 1 day. And then over the past week, we had 10 issues closed by 4 different people, with 3 new issues opened up by 3 people. We are net down a bit there on issues for libraries. That leaves us with 682 issues open across all the libraries, and there are currently 3 of them labeled as Good First Issue, which you can find listed over at circuitpython.org/contributing, which is the website you should head to if you are interested in getting involved with CircuitPython. On that page, again, circuitpython.org/contributing, you'll find a list of open PRs and open issues. What we tend to point folks towards first is that list of open PRs. You can take a look through there, find something that is either interesting to you or that you've got the hardware for whichever library it is, or if you've got some knowledge of that particular library or the piece of hardware that it interfaces with. Find something like that, click through to GitHub, and then take a look at the proposed change inside that PR. You can look over the code for spelling, syntax, logic. If you do have the hardware, you can test it out. Leave a comment there on GitHub letting us know what you found when you looked it over. If you did have the hardware and were able to test it out, let us know how it went. If you get comfortable with that process and would like to get leveled up to leave official reviews there on GitHub, we can work with you to make that happen. If you want to start getting your hands dirty on some actual coding rather than reviewing, you can also find open issues listed at circuitpython.org/contributing. There's a couple navigation links along the top where you can click over to the issues list. It is a similar list of links over to GitHub, but these ones represent issues which do not already have a proposed solution. So these are waiting for a person to come along who's willing to try to resolve whatever that issue is, be it a bug or a new feature or something like that. So if you, again, find something in that list that is interesting to you or that you've got the hardware for, you can click through, and this time you will go to a GitHub issue where you can then kind of attempt to create a resolution to that issue. Again, fix the bug, implement the new feature, create the new example, whatever it may be for that particular issue, and you can submit your own PR with those changes. We have a guide to submitting to CircuitPython or the libraries using Git and GitHub. We also have folks who are around throughout the week on Discord who are more than willing to help. So if you would like to contribute, whether that's reviewing or submitting your own PRs, but you feel like you're having trouble with some part of the process, be it something with version control or something with pre-commit or GitHub Actions or whatever, please come say hi on Discord. Let us know what you're up to. And folks will be more than happy to help you along. We want everyone to be able to contribute, no matter your background or skill sets or anything like that. So if you would like to help out, but need help, please come say hi on Discord. We love to help folks. Next up, I'll tell you about the library updates in the last 7 days. There is a list of them here in the notes doc if you'd like to take a look at those, and I will mention the 3 from the community bundle. This week there are a couple updates in the Adafruit bundle, but over in the community bundle side, we've got updates to Piper Blockley, the QMI 8658C, and the CircuitPython slider, which I believe is Display.io widget. So check that stuff out if you're interested. And with that, I will pass it over to Jeff, who has volunteered to read the Blinka section for us.
Hello. Blinka is our compatibility layer that lets you run CircuitPython code on single board computers like the Raspberry Pi. And we had little activity with no pull requests merged, leaving 14 open pull requests. Issues-wise, 1 issue was closed and 2 new issues were open, leaving a total of 120 open issues. Statistics, besides that, we had about 20,000 PyWheels downloads in the last month, and 146 different single-board computers are supported. And that's Blinka.
All right, thank you, Jeff. Next up is Hug Reports. Hug Reports is a chance to highlight folks in the community and beyond for doing awesome things. I'll start, then we'll go down the list alphabetically or however they appear in the notes doc to give everyone a chance to read out your Hug Reports. If you are text only or missing the meeting, then I will read them for you. And then let me take the first timestamp and I'll give you my Hug Reports. From me, thanks to NearDoc for looking into our rough configuration inside Cookie Cutter, figuring out how to have it use more of the checks that we have configured it for. Thanks to Paul Cutler for bringing back the CircuitPython Show podcasts. I'm excited to listen to those. Thanks to Liz for a helpful Thanks to Liz for a helpful resource and guidance on writing a new product learn guide, and a group hug to everyone in this community. Next up is C. Grover, and then after that will be Dan. C. Grover says, group hug for everyone in the LA area dealing with the devastating fires. Hug report for squid.jpg for sharing your inspiring ideas and projects on Paul's podcast, and for Foamy Guy, me, for the crafting video streams. The overarching concept and coding techniques are very applicable to other projects. Thanks, C. Grover. Next up is Dan, and after that will be Jeff. But here's Dan.
Okay, thanks. So thanks to Jeff M. in Discord and D. Beersock on GitHub, who did a lot of thorough testing of a CircuitPython regression that showed up in the 9.2.2 release, but only with ESP32S3 under certain circumstances. And we have it pinned down, now we have to fix it. And thanks, a group hug to all the community helpers in Discord over the past few weeks. There have been a lot of questions and a lot of people helping. Appreciate it. Okay.
All right, thanks, Dan. Next up is Jeff, and then Scott will round it out. But first, we hear from Jeff.
Hello, I've got just one. I have a hug for Dan and Retired Wizard for doing some testing on the RP2350B IPIO pins pull request. Really appreciated that.
All right, thank you, Jeff. And next up, rounding out the hug reports, will be Scott.
Quick hug to Squid JPEG as well for being a guest on the CircuitPython show. I listened to it on my walk-in today, and it's awesome to hear about more people's projects and those including CircuitPython. And Game Boys, of course.
All right, thank you, Scott. Next up will be status updates section. So as a reminder, status updates is our time to tell folks what we've been up to individually. I'll start, then we'll go through the list in round robin fashion again. So I'll get us started. When I call on you, take a couple of minutes, talk about what you've been doing since the last meeting and what you'll be up to until the next meeting. If a discussion becomes too long, we can always move it down to in the weeds. So I will kick us off here after time stamp. I created a repo and read the docs for a display analog clock library, cleaned up the code and made a standalone example that runs with a built-in display, because prior I had been using some external displays. This week I intend to add that new library to the bundle, as well as add another example that shows how to use NTP to get the current time and then keep updating the clock face. The simple test just kind of sets it to a specific time, so I figure it would be good to have an actual functional clock example as well. So that's what I will work on this week. Last week, though, I added a page to the Wiz Smart Lights guide for using the scanning functionality in order to find lights that are on your network and map to them by MAC address, which is nice, especially if you have dynamic IPs that change frequently. Then it's kind of a pain to keep track of your lights and which IP they're at. This way you don't have to. I started working on guide pages for the TMC 2209. And then over the weekend on my own time a bit, I was practicing C by implementing some basic ciphers and doing some debugging with GDB when I messed it up. So I'm getting better with those two tools, but still lots of practice to come. Next up, I will read for C. Grover, and then Dan will be after that. So C. Grover says, updated the final version of the LCARS weather display to incorporate a day-night color palette shift based on Adafruit IO, Adafruit IO Plus weather, sunrise, and sunset values. Used the Cedar Grove palette filter, which is available in the community bundle. That's a library, to adjust the range of colors in the background BMP images palette. We'll make it easy in the future to incorporate a red alert display condition as well. There's a link here to Adafruit Playground page if you'd like to learn more about this project. C. Grover also mentions developed a simple scheme for testing Adafruit IO feed freshness without resorting to using time calculations. This feature is essential for detecting when the data source device out in the workshop has failed to upload to Adafruit IO. The plan is to incorporate it into an all-weather system display devices. Finally got around to making a simple enclosure for the CG35 calculator. Probably would be easier if I'd used a 3D printer or a laser cutter, but I really enjoyed cutting and bending plexiglass using mostly hand tool techniques. There's a link here for that as well if you'd like to take a look at the calculator. And then rounding out C. Grover's updates, next is to complete 2 more project enclosures using the 2020 AI extrusion parts, maybe AL, aluminum, I think, actually probably, aluminum extrusion parts, and then resume the Portawing PCB project. I'm chomping at the bit to get back to PCB design after a long hiatus. Thank you, C. Grover, for those updates. Next up is Dan, and following that will be Jeff. But here's Dan.
All right. So last Thursday, I released CircuitPython 9.2.2, which had over like 50 pull requests in it from past 9.2.1. The main thing that I did in terms of fixing things last week was there was an issue on ESP32S2 only where I2C bus scans were giving a lot of spurious results. And sort of by accident, I found out that adding a delay in a certain place fixed that. I found that out because I added a print statement there, and then the problem went away. So then I said, okay, well, how about the delay here? So we don't really know the answer, but it's an easy fix for now. I fixed some other bugs and incompatibilities with CircuitPython while working on circuit matter in CircuitPython. I eventually decided I needed to add a bunch of features to MDNS to continue that work. So I'll be doing that, but not necessarily right away. And then another thing that came up is that in 9.2.2, there's a regression that ESP32S3 boards sometimes don't show up on USB, especially the closer they are to the host computer in terms of whether there's a hub in between them and the host computer or not. So this seems maybe like some kind of timing problem. I narrowed it down to a PR that updated TinyUSB, so I'll be continuing to look at what are the changes in that and see whether this issue was already reported to TinyUSB or not, and maybe do some bisecting in TinyUSB if necessary. Maybe it's already been fixed too, so we'll see. And the other thing that I started looking at is that we've had some problems with the Arduino, the Adafruit Arduino NeoPixel library, which after Espressif, the ESP32 board support package for Arduino got updated. We had to make a change, and it turned out that it was not perfect because it didn't support strands that were greater than 73 pixels long because you were allocating too much storage on the stack. So some community members proposed some PRs for this. I thought they were still in process, but they seem to be done. This is from like last summer. And so we really need to get something merged. I'll merge one of those PRs. CircuitPython does it a sort of a different way, which is like less work because it depends more on ESP IDF underneath. And I'll see maybe about submitting a PR to do it the CircuitPython way later. But first we want to get the library working again. But again, this is Arduino NeoPixel, not CircuitPython NeoPixel. And that's it.
All right. Thank you, Dan. Next up is Jeff, and then we'll have Scott after that. But here's Jeff.
So the main thing I did last week was completed work on the RP2350 high PIO pins. So that enables on the upcoming Metro RP2350 and other boards based on the RP2350B to use PIO on any of those pins, and also in particular to use USB, the USB header that's on the upcoming Metro RP2350 product. I did some other small items in the Adafruit and CircuitPython world. One that I want to call attention to is just a change to the way in CircuitPython we list the documentation, the files that are included in the documentation. Before, it was based on an exclude list, so if you created a file that by its extension looked like it could be part of documentation, or you had it in a submodule, it would be pulled in and then your documentation would usually fail to build in a weird way. Now it's based on an include list, which is a lot shorter and should be more maintainable, because if we decide, we've got a new directory with documentation in it, we just list that instead of having to add an exclusion like for every submodule that has files in it that look like they're a document and so forth. My main ongoing work is on the Pi5 RGB matrix support. I did a demo way back before Christmas, and I've been working on refactoring it into a C++ library. Before this meeting, I got to the point that it builds, but I haven't been able to test it. Once that's debugged and working, I will wrap that C++ library so it can be called from Python, and you'll be able to do things like send a bitmap or a PIL image to your RGB matrix. And that's what I'm working on. It will probably take all week. Thank you.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Jeff. Next up is Scott.
Hello. Speaking in terms of things that'll probably take all week, my main thing is I'm working on Zephyr USB support. So merging Zephyr with TinyUSB. As folks know, it's kind of core to the workflow of CircuitPython. So I'm working on getting that working in the Zephyr port. Zephyr does have their own USB stack, but we've used TinyUSB for so long, we're going to try to use that instead. So figuring out the boundary of like what Zephyr manages and then what we do is kind of where I'm at. And then in terms of smaller things that I want to do this week, wrapping up CircuitPython 2025. So consider this last call. This is a chance for folks to talk about what you want to see from CircuitPython in the coming year. You can go to the blog and search CircuitPython 2025 for what we've gotten so far and instructions on how to do it. But basically, post somewhere online, the forums, a GitHub gist, that's something. Email circuitpython2025@adafruit.com, and I will blog it up on the website. You'll see a summary post go up today, and then on Wednesday, the final summary post with all the links will go up with whatever I get. Tomorrow is the last day, so I'll do it on Wednesday. So I'm doing that at the start of the week, and then I've been chatting with Robert Faranack, who does some streaming on YouTube, about doing a CircuitPython related one. So I've got a little like prep the example stuff to do. I'm going to do an Adafruit playground, just kind of links and examples there, so that when we do the stream next week or recording, I don't think it's streamed live actually, but I'll have all that stuff prepped for next week. It's mostly cribbing from Learn Guides, but I just want to like test things on hardware and make sure that it's all working as planned. So those are the two smaller things this week, in addition to email and reviews and stuff. Note, I am off next Monday because it's a holiday in the US, which is a good segue, I imagine. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, Scott. And that is it for status updates. We don't currently have any items in the weeds, but this would be when we talk about them if we did. So we will bounce right along to the wrap-up. Let me scroll notes that I can read from. All right. So yes, this has been the CircuitPython Weekly for January 13th, 2025. I will mention that in a minute. Thanks to everyone who participated. If you would like to help support Adafruit and CircuitPython, and those of us that work on CircuitPython, consider purchasing hardware from the Adafruit shop at adafruit.com. The video of this meeting will get released on YouTube at youtube.com/Adafruit, and the podcast will be made available on major podcast services. It will also get featured in the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter, which you can visit adafruitdaily.com to subscribe to that. The next meeting will be on Tuesday next week instead of Monday, so we are Tuesday, January 21st next week. It will be at the usual time of 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific, but on Tuesday the 21st next week. The meeting, as always, is held on the Adafruit Discord, which you can join by going to adafru.it/Discord. If you would like to get notified about changes to the meeting, including the upcoming one for next week being on Tuesday, you could ask to be added to the CircuitPythonistas role on Discord. We send out pings to that role when we do change the day or time. And that is it for the meeting. Thanks you to everyone, and we will see you next week.